The American media and entertainment industry are really good at making other countries look really bad. And they create these stereotypes that we all kind of believe and think are true until we go see it for ourselves and realize they're either half-truths or just outright lies. So in this video, we're going to take a look at the lies we believed about France and talk about how they compare to reality. And the first one is that France is too expensive.
Yeah, this is not true. Some parts, of course, are more expensive compared to cheaper countries like Albania or some parts of Southeast Asia or Ecuador. However, we were pleasantly surprised by the affordability overall of the country, especially when we stayed in Dijon. It was remarkably affordable. It was a lot more similar to our time in Albania and Montenegro compared to like the United States, for example, our time in Denver, which was quite a bit more expensive.
When we were in Paris, the Airbnbs were like $100 per night, which is pretty expensive. We looked for cheaper places, but if we went further out, they were the same price. You just got a bigger place. Well, we didn't need a bigger place. There's just the two of us. So the housing in Paris was pretty expensive, but we paid in Dijon the same that we paid in Tirana, Albania. It was about $55 per night for the lodging that we had there for a nice little one bedroom, kind of on the outskirts of the historic center. And it was super nice. And the groceries especially are extremely affordable. So we would go to the grocery store, come home with 2 or 3 bags of groceries, and rarely was it over $30 or $40 for that. In the US, when we would go, it was usually $30 a bag. So that kind of puts a little bit in perspective. We'll talk about all the costs in a different video.
Yeah, and also public transportation was extremely affordable. To take the metro in from where we stayed in Bamba, I think is how you pronounce it, into Paris, into downtown, only cost us, what, €2, I think?
$2.40, I think.
Yeah, it was super affordable. I was pleasantly surprised by that.
Yeah, the restaurants are a bit more expensive, but we were able to eat a nice dinner out for like the $60 to $80 range that included wine. In the US, we went out for lunch in San Antonio. It was like $110, I think, something like that. And we left hungry. I mean, it wasn't even that much food. We had lunch. It was like 2 bowls of quinoa and vegetables and a couple beers and an appetizer. It was ridiculously expensive every time we went out there.
Yeah, that was really shocking. We're still in shock from those US prices we paid. Another lie that we believed is that it is a dirty country, and that is just not true.
It's not. I'm not sure where that came from. Maybe it used to be. We've heard people say they were here 20, 30 years ago and it was dirty, and they were happy to hear that it had been cleaned up. And it could also be because the Olympics are here this summer, and actually they're starting in a couple of weeks. So maybe they've cleaned it up for that, but I don't know. It just seemed really clean to me. And there were always people out. We call them the blue crew or the green team in Ecuador. They were always out sweeping and stuff. And we saw the same thing in France, in Paris, Dijon, and Lyon.
And in Beaune too, they had people cleaning all the time, and they collect the trash all the time. So it's not like it's accumulating for days in the street. I was really pleased by the amount of cleanliness because I actually kind of have myself prepared for some grossness, and I did not experience any grossness.
The next thing we're going to talk about is that they hate Americans. I hear this all the time. We even get it in our comments. Do they hate Americans like they say in the TV and movies and stuff? We did not experience that at all. In fact, it was quite the opposite. When we told them we were from the United States, they did not run away scared. They talked to us, and they were super friendly and happy to talk to us.
Yeah, a lot of people asked what part of the country we were from and what we liked about it, and they shared their experiences if they had gone to the US. So there was definitely no anti-American sentiment, at least directed towards us.
You know, we're also really nice to people. We're friendly, we smile, we try to speak French, and we think that we may have a different experience than some people who may not be as friendly as we are, because if you're friendly to people, they're more likely to be friendly back to you.
Yeah, and that leads us to our next lie, is that the French people are rude and unfriendly, and we did not experience any of that either. People were super warm and friendly and welcoming. They always say bonjour. I mean, everyone greets everyone. I don't care if you're French or American or from another country, because obviously they're used to tourists from all over the world there as well, but they are very welcoming.
In fact, we went to a train station. We were trying to buy train tickets and the kiosk was broken. And this little old lady came up, I would say, what, 80 years old
Yeah.
probably. And she spoke enough English and we spoke enough French to understand each other. And she was trying to help us with the kiosk. She was so friendly. And then at the end, she's like, oh, don't worry about it. Just go on the train. And if they ask, just say you're a tourist and you don't speak French.
She was hilarious, but she was so sweet. She came out of her way to try to help us out because I guess we just must have screamed tourist or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. We were laughing and having fun. And that was like our first day in France. And what a great experience. And we had so many fun experiences like that with people just excited that we were there and talking to us. And also, you know, there's a stereotype that no one speaks English, and that is not true because there's plenty of people who spoke enough English. However, there's also that stereotype that if you don't speak any French, that you should just not speak at all. And we did not encounter any of that sentiment. I was so pleased that people were willing to help us while we were trying to pick out the right words in French and trying to string those sentences together. And they helped us with our pronunciation.
Yeah, that was the main thing they helped with.
Yeah.
Our pronunciation is terrible. And a lot of times they didn't understand at all what we were trying to say. And then we would work together to try and figure it out. But most of them spoke English, but we were trying to be polite and at least try to speak some French to them. And it seemed to really appreciate it. They were not upset with us for trying to speak French at all.
And also, we always make a point, like I said already, to say bonjour and parlez-vous anglais if we want to ask a question, because one thing you don't want to do is just to assume that everybody speaks English, because that's just rude, I think, anywhere, period. We talk about our bad pronunciation in this video, but we did not know any French at all before we planned this trip, so we started using LingoPie, today's sponsor. We've been studying French with LingoPie for a few months now, and it has made a huge difference. Before we started, I didn't know how to say anything in French other than oui. So I had to start with the fundamentals, the basics, like just basic words and vocabulary, and how to pronounce things because the sounds are much different. Plus, you can follow along with the subtitles and the script. And if I need to, I could slow down the speed, replay the sentence with the loop feature, and even record myself speaking a sentence, playing it back, and getting graded. Plus, you can create your own vocab list and practice the words and hear them in sentences. The programming and learning features are totally bingeable. I have gotten pulled in for hours because it's a lot of fun to watch all the programs and build up my vocabulary list. Plus, I know it is working because I can say more than just oui or bonjour, such as je suis désolé, je parle le français. And LingoPie has programming for all levels, not just for a newbie like me. So if you're intermediate to advanced, you're still gonna learn a lot with LingoPie. They have a Netflix browser extension, and they're always adding new features and shows to help you learn faster and stay motivated. And that's why this is one of our favorite ways to learn and practice foreign languages such as Spanish and now French. Click the link below to save 70% off the lifetime plan.
Another lie we believed is that everyone in France smokes.
Do you want to have lunch? No, I'll have a cigarette.
If you want to go where everyone smokes, try Albania. We've heard Serbia is like that. Greece was like that. France, not so much. I don't know if they've had a massive quit smoking campaign going on over the past several years or not, but we did not experience the level of smoking that we anticipated coming here. We were really prepared like we were in Italy and Rome, walking down the street surrounded by smokers and basically in a cloud of smoke that followed us down the street. It did not happen a single time in France.
No, I was pretty surprised by that. I mean, obviously, there are people who smoke. We're not saying it's a no smoking culture, but it's just not as prevalent as we thought.
Next lie we believed is that every place has a bidet. I mean, bidets were invented in France, right? We didn't have a single bidet during our whole experience there. And we did from pretty much Spain all the way through Albania. We had a bidet in every single Airbnb, and I actually kind of really like them now. I'm a bidet convert, so I was pretty disappointed to come to France and not have a bidet anymore.
I have to say, this is one thing I never thought we would actually be talking about on video or period.
But it's true. Don't you? Come on.
I do appreciate the bidet. I'm not going to hold back. I like it too. All right, what's our next one?
The next one is that they all dress like fashion models.
Yes, this was my stereotype that it really was more for Paris than for all of France. But I read these articles. They're like, oh, you're going to Paris. You don't wear this or don't dress like this so you don't stand out like a tourist, and everybody is super fashion focused. And yeah, we did see some people who were dressed extremely nicely, but we see that everywhere. But also we saw a lot of people that dressed just like everybody else. And so I had this all built up in my head that I wasn't going to fit in because I wasn't going to be French enough. And that was not the case at all.
Well, and if you watch Emily in Paris, they really take that stereotype over the top. They put her in these crazy outfits all the time on that show, and they're probably like $2,000 designer dresses that she wears out to, walk in the park. But it's just not what we saw. We saw some people dressed really nicely, especially in the Champs-Élysées area. But for the most part, and these aren't all tourists that are dressing like normal people either. We hear them speaking French. It's a very obvious accent that we can hear. So we know they're speaking French natively. They're French people, and they dress normally.
Yes, they do. And they all looked everybody looked nice, but they weren't dressed like supermodels everywhere.
Yeah, another lie is that every meal is a gourmet 3 to 5 hour extravaganza. That is not the case. We saw a lot of people walking down the street eating sandwiches, ice cream. We saw people in fast food restaurants. All the American fast food chains are represented in France, which is actually surprising. In fact, somebody commented in our Dijon video, we were talking about how great the restaurant scene is there, and then there's a Five Guys in the background. We saw, they've got all of the fast food chains in France. I'm really surprised by that. We're going to wrap up by talking about a few truths that we did notice. And the first is that baguettes are real. They love their baguettes. It's unbelievable how many times we see people walking down the street with a baguette. Sometimes not even in a sleeve, just like bear-clawed baguette running down the street, walking, riding a bicycle. We saw baguettes in baskets on bicycles. I mean, that is a stereotype that I have about France, and it is true.
And it's fun. So we both took turns getting a baguette and walking down the street. And I gotta say, I understood it. I'm not making fun. I mean, it is a fun thing to do, but it is also an important part of their culture. The bakeries are very popular, and they were quite full all the time.
Yeah, and the baguettes are really good.
Yeah.
They are really good. I understand why they like them so much, and they make sandwiches out of them. So we see people walking down the street with the baguette sandwich. They even had a bread festival while we were in Paris right outside Notre Dame. It was a tent set up. They had speakers and displays and everything. It was a festival of bread, I think is what it was called. So bread is a very, very important part of the French culture, and it goes nicely with the cheese and the wine, I guess.
Yes, which is another truth, that they eat a lot of cheese and drink a lot of wine. And that is true. We saw stores just completely devoted to cheese. You can buy wine all over the place. And of course, there are a lot of wine stores. And, they make wine and cheese, and it is part of their culture.
We talked to this woman from the U.S. who was in the train station in Dijon. She said that she ordered a salad and it had like a wedge of cheese on the top. She's like, it's more cheese than I would eat in a week.
Yeah.
She said the wedge was so huge.
And it's affordable. That's the other thing, is that you can get a nice bottle of wine and some cheese. We didn't buy any cheese, but we saw it, and we know you can get it, and it's reasonably priced. So, of course, it's part of their culture. But I'm sorry, I'm going to cut you off for a second. Now you have me dreaming of a baguette with some of that Dijon mustard. Oh my gosh, I'm jonesing for some of that.
Yeah, Dijon. Although in the U.S. we say Dijon mustard.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Everybody corrected us in our last video. It's Dijon. All right, the final truth that we want to talk about is the dog poop.
Oh, merde. I stepped in shit.
You definitely did.
And that is something that we see in TV shows and movies about watching where you step. And it's true. I stepped in it in Dijon. We were walking around. I was looking at the map on the phone and stepped right in it. And we did see quite a bit, although I gotta say not nearly as much as we see in Latin America, especially. Everywhere we go in Latin America, there's dog poop all over the sidewalks. But in France, we did see it, but not as bad.
No, it wasn't actually that bad at all compared to some other parts of the world we've been in, but somehow you still managed to step in it.
I know. All right, guys, let us know in the comments if we missed anything or if you have anything to add, especially if you know of a truth or something that's not true about France or the French culture. That would be great. We'd love to hear it from you.
This is a fun video to do. I enjoyed it, but it's also a really good reminder that just because you read about some stereotype or read about something in the news or a typical stereotype in a TV show or a movie, that does not mean it is true about the whole country.
Yeah, you can't make up your mind on this stuff until you see it for yourself, because a lot of the stuff is just not true, or it may be just really outdated. It may have been a truth 50 years ago, but it's not anymore.
Yes. And I think on that note, we're going to wrap up this video. Before you go, leave us a like, please, and we will see you all next time.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.